Okay. Take two. Sorry, two. Like, that's rude. Tonight on Mac to the Future Go, for the second time, we're going to talk about Hackintoshes. We're going to talk about a farm burning down in Canada that may or may not have been Apple's fault. We're going to talk about how extra important your Apple ID is and what you should do, you, to protect it. Tonight, maybe, here on the Mac to the Future Go livecast.
And here.
Okay, we are once again. You know, I could probably do an entire show talking about all the various screw ups that have happened just tonight with trying to get this live cast going. And this is our second try at it. And everyone who's currently watching, thank you for being so patient. We are running about 13, 14 minutes behind schedule, but that's okay. It'll all be edited in post. And tonight, as per usual, this man has infinite patience with me and for me. It is Mr. Warren Sklar, whose microphone hopefully is working now. Oh, damn.
No, I'm kidding. I'm here.
All right, to give you guys a little bit of background, what happened? Like 5 minutes before 8 o'clock, Warren and we start connecting on Skype, and he can't hear me. I could hear him, but he couldn't hear me. As it turns out, one of my cats probably walked across my mixer and hit one of the buttons that turned off USB coming out of the mixer from my microphone. And it took me a while to find that. And by that time we got that going, we started the show the first time, and then all of a sudden Warren's microphone started breaking up. So that's kind of where we're at.
Cats. It's always a cat. It's always a cat. That's why you need a dog.
No. We got 3 cats here, and that's more than enough. So, real quick, we have some people here in the chat room. We have Mr. David Ginsburg. How are you today, David? Let's see. How do I do this? Yes, I remember now. We have Brian Monroe. Take 2. Yes, that's kind of how things are working, Brian. We have let's see, Paul Douglas Williams.
Yeah.
Auto playing videos on Facebook are lame. I agree with that. I agree with that completely. We have Frank Petrie. Feed froze when I went full screen. Who else we got? Did I say David Ginsburg? I did say David Ginsburg, or did I say David Ginsburg? Just in case, he put up a nice comment here. So he said doing great. So there he is, right there. David Ginsburg says we're doing great. I will not argue with Mr. Ginsburg. I think we are doing great. Okay,
we are doing good.
A couple things that happened last week. I did. You guys saw it when we did the take 1. You saw the thing about fixing Levelator. I put together a video using Ecamm Live talking about how to fix Levelator for people who use Levelator. If you don't know what Levelator is, it's a program that allows you to take basically multi-track audio, and it makes all the levels pretty much equal. It's a great program for podcasters. And as it turns out, the entire video, the entire effort was a complete and utter waste of time because I was using an older version of Levelator, and the new version of Levelator does not have the problem. Yeah.
And I don't know what is a Levelator?
Levelator, it's an application. So basically, after I get done recording the My Mac podcast, It's in GarageBand. I've put in the ads. I've put in the bumpers. I've done all the stuff I need to do. So I exported out of GarageBand to my desktop, and I've got an alias on my desktop for this program called Levelator. And I take my completed exported audio file, AIFF, drop it on the Levelator. Levelator looks at the file and looks at all the different levels of the audio that's in it and kind of balances it all out. It's oh my God, it's such a great program. And it did, and the people who actually made it have abandoned it. And it's too bad because eventually it's going to stop working. And that will really be a shame.
David wants to know what version of Levelator you're on.
Well, the version of Levelator that I'm going to move comments up here. The version of Levelator that I was using for the demonstration was 2.1.1, and the current version is 2.1.2, which doesn't have the problem that I spent a long time putting together a video to show people how to fix it. Yeah, that's what I did. All right.
Okay. Sorry, I tuned out a little bit, but okay.
That's
it's
okay.
Good.
Before we get started on everything else, this weekend, assuming that everything goes the way that I think it's going to go, we're going to have Barry Falk, who is the man who created the Midwest Mac Barbecue, and Mike Potter, who is the host of For Mac Eyes Only podcast, great podcast. And he is the organizer for MacStock, which has gone on for the last 3 years, and you guys have heard me talk about MacStock here. MacStock 2018 is coming in July. It's going to be Gaz from the My Mac podcast, myself. It's going to be Barry Falk, and it's going to be Mike Potter, hopefully all live like this, like we're doing right here, next Saturday night. Currently, we're looking at, I believe it's a 4 p.m. startup. Mostly because that's like 9 p.m. for Gaz, and it's like 3 p.m. for Barry and Mike, and who knows? It's going to be crazy. But yeah, we're going to get everybody together to talk about MacStock 2018. If you're on the fence about going, you should tune in and check it out. I'll make it available to everyone later on. It's going to be a good time. There was a thing in the Mac to the Future group where somebody was asking about Hackintoshes. And have you ever put together a Hackintosh, Warren?
I haven't. I started thinking about it, and then I read there's a couple websites out there. I think the big one's Tony
X86.
Yeah. So I started reading it. I mean, this was before I thought about it before I started really getting into Mac. It was going to be my entry level into the Mac because it was going to be cheaper. So at that point, I started reading it, and it looks good in theory, but when you start reading the limitations of things, it got like something I didn't want to do. And it was like, everything works great, except there's no Wi-Fi. I'm like, well, you kind of need that. And, I don't know. Everything works great, except the keyboard doesn't work. I'm like, okay. So I started, so I didn't do it then. And then I thought about it a few times. And every time I thought about it, I convinced myself not to do it. Just because I like updating my software. And I know every time you update it, it could break the kex files. And then every time you do that, it doesn't boot up. So it's still something I might do. It's just I always talk myself out of doing it. How about you?
I also have thought many times about doing a Macintosh or Hackintosh, and the parts are certain. Putting together a Hackintosh is certainly a lot cheaper than buying a ready-made computer from Apple.
Yep.
But then again, depending on the parts that you get, and the fact that there are very, very few fully put together options, you can't just go and get a Dell computer and make a couple changes to it and have a working Macintosh. Or same thing with like most other. I mean, there are a few options that are out there to like pre-buy a computer. Though most people that are going to go to the trouble of creating a Hackintosh are probably going to want to, buy all the parts themselves. And if you go to Tony X86, there's lots and lots of like build lists of, the bits and pieces and all the rest of that, and what works best and what doesn't work best. And, all the software is there to make it happen. And they're usually about, anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks behind as far as updates go that come out for Mac OS from Apple. So, I mean, yeah, technically you can do it, but like you said, you'll find that sometimes Bluetooth won't work, sometimes Wi-Fi won't work, and there's usually ways around all that stuff, but you end up having to kind of search out for a lot of solutions. And, it's not that I can't do it, it's that I don't really, at this point in my life, have the time or the inclination to take, again, if there was like just, okay, you buy these pieces, you put them together, and it'll work with no problem, and if there's updates, don't worry about it. It'll work with all of the Mac software that's out there. And when you're running a Hackintosh, you can't always say that. You can't always say that everything is going to work out of the box. You can't say that all the software that you may depend on is going to work out of the box. And that's not even, and that's putting aside the whole legal issue of,
let me talk about that too when we get to that.
Well, we can talk about it right now.
Yes, I mean, so the legal issue and the license agreement issue. Mm-hmm. So Apple knows that Tony 86 is out there, and
sure.
Apple knows that people are doing it. Apple, I think, could figure out a way to prevent people from doing it in their software. I'm sure they could do something that will just make it not work, and they're not bothering doing that.
Well, I mean, they could do something to the firmware of every single Mac that's out there and make it impossible for anybody to duplicate it. But I think that would just cause them more problems than it's really. Apple is. I think you're right. Apple is very much aware of the Hackintosh community.
I actually think that in some ways it gets people onto the Mac to start. I think it's a gateway
for some people.
And I think for some people, I think Apple knows that. The problem comes if you are, trying to sell a Hackintosh or
make a business out of it.
Make a business out of it or use it for your business. That becomes a problem. I don't know if you remember about a year or 2 years ago.
You're talking about SciStar?
I don't know if that's what it was called, but there was a seller that was selling HP laptops with Mac OS on it. It was like making the Mac. It was. I'll find the article, but it was. It came out. It was literally an HP laptop with a Hackintosh on it, and they were selling it, and they shut him down. Apple shut him down about, a couple months later. So, they're aware of it. They'll stop you from selling it. Yes, the license agreement is not letting you to really distribute it, so you're technically breaking it. I think that Apple could could stop it. I think it is a gateway. I think honestly a lot of people like me try it, can't get it to really work, say screw this, I'm going to go get a cheap Mac Mini and go from there. I bet a lot of people started that way. So I don't think they care that much.
No, I would agree. I really, unless you're trying to do something that's going to eat into Apple's revenues by making computers that have the Mac OS pre-built on it. Like there was a company in South Florida called SciStar that was actually selling.
Sorry.
They were actually selling Macintosh compatible PCs. And they tried, I don't remember the exact route that they did to try to get around being sued by Apple, but it didn't work. And they closed their doors not long after that. And there's been, and this doesn't even go into the whole, clone days of the late 90s with UMax and power computing and the Motorola and Motorola subclones. Those were all PowerPC. I mean, there hasn't been a legal Intel-based Macintosh computer besides what's currently being sold by Apple ever since they made the switch to Intel. And until Apple decides that they want to get away from making Mac computers, and to me, if they ever get to that magic 20% market share penetration, it might make sense for them to do something like that, where they basically, and Gaz and I have talked about this on the MyMac podcast. To me, they could do what they did in the 90s, but still control it by having hardware-specific platforms. So you would have a motherboard for a mini computer, a motherboard for a desktop computer, a motherboard for an all-in-one, and maybe a couple of different motherboards for laptops. And it's a reference platform, and everybody builds based on that reference platform. But they're all kind of starting from the same place. Apple can guarantee that these systems will work with the Mac OS because it's their design. The internals, the guts of it is Apple's design, and it's up to the other manufacturers to put the pieces together and then compete on price.
Yeah, I mean, there's some irony too. I mean, Microsoft doesn't seem to care what you stick Windows on. You could dual boot onto a Mac, you could virtualize it. I've seen people put Windows on like Game Boys. Probably not really, but they literally don't care either. So, and then there's the whole Linux thing where you can put Linux on pretty much anything.
Yeah.
It comes down to, at this point, Apple and Microsoft are happy if you're using their operating system, no matter how you're doing it. It gets you used to it. You recommend it. Apple, for sure, you get into their ecosystem. Maybe you buy iTunes stuff, their services. Although Hackintosh has a pretty they keep patching and fixing it, but iMessage usually won't work with a Hackintosh because it has to reach out to some kind of activation server that I can't do, and they keep patching it so it worked for a little bit and stop. But iMessage is just an example. But yeah, I mean, people will use people do use their operating system, and it's it's a way to spread it. I don't think the operating system is as important as it used to be to the companies, to Microsoft, to Apple, certainly to Linux. It's the services now, and it's getting used to it. It's recommending it. It's deploying it, and of course then they want you to deploy it legally. So, it could work out in their advantage. And Brian is saying Microsoft does want you to pay for Windows. Yes. I'm not saying they don't care where you're. I'm not saying they want you to steal it, but they don't care where you run it. And if you have to get a license for it. Yeah, they don't care where you run it as long as you have a key for it and buy a license. I never said that they didn't want money for it.
Well, although, I think I don't think that Microsoft is that far away from
free OSs,
from a free OS. I think that they're seeing the success that Apple is having with services, and let's face it, when Apple was selling the Mac OS. Originally, like up until I think 3 or 4 versions ago, it was $129 for a license to the Mac OS. You could get a 5 license family pack kind of thing for $200, which is what I usually did since we had so many different Macs in the house. And then they cut the price to $29, and then they were like, you know what? We're just going to give it away because Apple was making most of their money through hardware. And then as time has gone on, Even the hardware has becoming kind of the second, third, fourth layer down as far as revenue goes. Other than iPhones, their number one revenue source is all of their services. So at what point do they just kind of say, you know what, we don't need to design and sell iMacs. We can just have other people, and they're not that far from it now. You know, Apple doesn't have any factories that build Macs or iPhones or anything else. They take their design and they say, okay, you know, company in China, here's the design for the latest iMac. Make me an iMac. Make me 1 million iMacs. And that's what they do. So, you know, it's designed in California and built in China.
Yep. But, you know, the problem with Microsoft is they don't have as much in the service business as Apple does. Currently. What they have is most, if not, most of the business, the
Office.
back end. They have Office 365 and Azure and all that. And that's, if we don't think Microsoft is making a killing off that, then
they're making a ton of money.
That's where they're making their money. So, you know,
but
they're going to go
actually selling individual licenses to Windows is not making Microsoft that much money. It's the corporate licenses for everything that Microsoft sells. Like if you're in a business or government or what have you, they basically say, okay, you have 100 employees. Because you have 100 employees, each year we're going to charge you, and you know, I don't know, X number of dollars per employee, and you will get the latest version of the operating system. You will get the latest version of Office. You'll get the latest version of, you know, whatever Microsoft software it is that you're using for each employee. And, you know, what it takes for, you know, Joe Blow from Idaho to walk into a Best Buy and say, I want to buy a copies of Windows 10, they don't care. That's like nothing for them.
They've been threatening or saying they're going subscription based on the software for about 3 years now for Windows. So eventually, and they're still saying it, so eventually what's going to happen is it's going to be part of Office 365. It's going to be your email, and it's going to be your SharePoint or your directory service. It's all going to be tied to a subscription.
That's fine.
It's fine. Of course, everybody's going to hate it because, you know, everybody has copies of Windows lying around and they don't want to, you know, pay $10 a month to use Windows.
Well, it depends on what they like. Right now, if as an individual you get a subscription to Office 365, $99 a year, that $99 a year gets you 5 licenses for Office. And if they were doing the same thing, or, you know, they'd probably have to go a little bit higher if they were going to include Windows in that as well. But if they were doing the same thing and including Windows for, say, $150 a year per person, and you get all the patches, you get all the updates, you get everything with Office, you know, I mean, just everything that Microsoft has for $150 a year, they'll make a killing. They're already making a killing on Office 365.
Maybe. I mean, it will get a lot of people to switch off it. It's like a lot of people who were thinking about switching and don't feel like paying a subscription. I mean, you could go like to these deal sites. You could pick up a Windows PC tablet. I've seen it for like $100, and that's with the actual activated copy of Windows on it. I mean, these things are, you know, Windows shouldn't be as expensive as it is. To go to a store and buy Windows, a license for Windows shouldn't cost $150, which does. But if it went to subscription, I think people would get upset about, you know, people just don't like paying monthly fees. And that's what
I'm not a fan of subscription services either. The only subscription service that I currently have is Office 365, because to get five licenses for Office and unlimited licenses for mobile devices. I've got it on my iPad. I've got it on my iPhone. You know, I had it. I was talking about this little thing. This is that Remix Mini that ran.
Oh, the famous Remix.
Yeah, that ran.
You bring it on
Android
every show?
OS. Not every
Yeah,
show,
yeah.
but yeah, just when it's relevant. I had Office on that thing, and that was $70 for that little thing. So
Brian, Brian makes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I'm good.
Brian makes a good point, though. I mean, he says, they're trying to push out businesses. Microsoft's business is not home users; it's schools and enterprise. And if they could roll out like a Windows Chromebook type thing for $100 per year per device that includes everything they need to schools or businesses, they'll do that.
And they'll make a killing. And
they'll make a killing.
Honestly,
but home
worth
users
it.
will have a problem. Yeah,
it's still worth it for businesses. It's still worth it for most governments, depending on how big those governments are. And I can't speak too much about what I want to say next, but I'm going to stop right there. But
all right, let's. We were talking about Hackintosh, though. I don't know how.
Yeah, somehow we end up talking.
Licensing. Anyway, Hackintosh.
Actually,
Hackintosh
why don't we? I think
fun.
if you're the kind of person that likes to tinker, and you don't mind not being on the cutting edge when it comes to operating system updates, and you don't mind going through the hassle of making audio work, and I feel your pain, brother, or making Bluetooth work or messages or whatever, then go to Tony X86, download a list of the hardware that you need to create a Hackintosh, and have at it. I mean, at the most, at the very, very worst, you'll end up with a computer that you can put Windows on for, $10 from eBay.
There you go. So yeah,
there he is, right there. David Ginsburg bought a legal Windows license on eBay for $10.
I'm sure he did. It's Chinese. It's all Chinese, and it came with a virus. Yeah. So do it, but don't come crying to us for support.
No, we're not going to help you. We're gonna take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a Canadian farm, and we are going to talk about your Apple ID. All coming up next. So everyone, hold on. We'll be right back. Are you a new Mac user or an old hand? Wish you could know the ins and outs, keyboard shortcuts, or hidden tips and tricks to make you more efficient using your favorite computer? Hey, it's your lucky day, because Edward Eisen has written a great guide to knowing more about the Mac and the OS that it runs on. It's called This is the Light Side, and it's available through Apple's iBookstore or with Amazon. Better yet, it's not a stuffy old book that gathers dust on the shelf once the next operating system is released, because it's an e-book that you can look at any time you want. It won't get outdated because it's continuously being updated. Information on setting up your new Mac, installing and getting rid of applications, security settings and what to look out for, keyboard shortcuts, some basic app recommendations, how to use Windows on your Mac, if you really want to, that is, advanced topics, searching, using iCloud, and much more. All this for a mere 99 cents. Go to the iBookstore or Amazon and check out Edward Eisen's This is the Light Side. It's the book you want on your virtual shelf.
Well, let me.
That's the desktop. I'm hitting the wrong button. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Everything is just insane. Yeah, we're trying to get it over to the the Mac to the Future Facebook page. That's right. That's what we're talking about here. Okay. While Warren is working on that, I will give you guys some background. I saw a story on this Canadian couple that is making the claim that after, and some of this is kind of, I don't know. They claim that they plugged in a 3-month-old iPhone 6, that something caught fire after they plugged it in and burned down their farmhouse. The local fire department has claimed that the fire started where the phone charger was, and currently the phone charger is in the hands of a private forensic firm that is working for the fire officials there in Canada, and neither the device nor the charger have been made available to Apple. This hasn't stopped throngs of people from using everyone's favorite change.org, because that's always made such a difference, and Facebook, to demand, I say, that Apple compensate the couple for their uninsured losses. So, here we go. Now, I found this story it's over at ubergizmo.com. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want to go check this out for yourself. But essentially, there was a little more information that I put in here. They plugged in this phone and then laid the phone down on top of a leather chair. And the fire officials in that area are saying that this was the general area where the fire started. Now, when you plug in an iPhone, and a lot of this depends on, whether or not it was an Apple charger or a third-party charger, it can get really, really hot. And what I'm thinking probably happened was that they weren't using an Apple charger, that they were using some third-party charger, and for reasons, this started the fire. Well, if you aren't using an Apple charger for your phone, and something happens to the device, or something happens that causes a fire or sparks or what have you, I just don't see that as being Apple's problem. They guarantee that the phone and the charger will work together as it's supposed to. And if you decide that you want to go cheap and get a less expensive charger, well, then any damages is pretty much on you. And if you look at probably the terms and service of the iPhone or the charger, or God only knows whatever else Apple puts out in relation to this, that they're going to basically tell you to go pound sand, that it's not really their problem or their fault. What do you think, Warren?
I mean, yeah, there's so many. First of all, yeah, we don't know exactly. Every time something like this happens, Apple investigates it, and then we never hear anything about it again. It's going to be either misuse usually, or it's going to it's going to be misuse, or it's going to be a third-party charger. That being said, I buy crappy chargers all over the place. I never had anything ever happen to them. So, I mean, could it happen? I guess it happens. If it's not an Apple product, then Apple will be off the hook, I think, if it did happen.
Right.
And if you're really worried about this stuff, then there's things, if cable, people are scared. If cables start to fray, especially anything that plugs into an outlet, then you should definitely not use that anymore. People, you've seen people post on some of the other Apple websites, not us, but they're like they'll have like a cable that's kind of hanging by one little bit of metal, and they're like, "Is this okay to still use?"
Oh,
I'm
sure,
like,
yeah, go ahead.
Sure, go for it. And then there's people like repairing MagSafe adapters on their own, and they're asking for help, what this wire does, and if you're going to play with it, or if it's broken, then
don't use it.
Then don't use it. And if it comes from China and you plug it in and it works, then maybe it's fine. Maybe don't leave it plugged in while you're away, just in case, I guess. But again, I have some shady electronics that I've never had any problem with it. So I think they probably misused it.
Yeah, and I just got picked up a new charger for my son Peter's 2008 MacBook Pro that he's using alongside other computers in the house. And basically the reason why I got him the charger is he's in the process right now of moving over to my old Mac Pro, and there'll be more on that another time. But while this is all going on, he's been using this laptop. He pulled it out, and I was looking at the charging cable for it, the charging brick for it, and right where the wires go into the brick, it was like the plastic was kind of frayed, and you could see the wires on the inside. It was like, yeah, okay, we're not going to use this charger anymore. I don't care if it still works. We're getting rid of this. We're going to get another charger. And there's a place right there in Fredericksburg, and I'll say the name of it. I don't give a crap. But Experamac and or Expedia, maybe that's not even the name of it. Something like that.
It's Experamac is a Mac repair chain.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah. It's a franchise, to be honest with you.
Right. And they had one. They had one for that machine, and it was reasonably priced, and we got it.
So when I used to work at the Apple specialty store, people would come in with their MagSafes or their Lightning cable with a sad face saying, "This isn't working anymore," and it was like what I told you, and hang by thread. And they're like, "No, well, you need a new one." And they're like, "Well, I don't want to pay $20 for a cable. I don't want to pay $80 for a MagSafe adapter." People cheap out, and then things happen. It's part of life. So. But yeah, I should have taken pictures of some of them, but we've gotten really interesting people, interesting conditions of, probably a fire hazard just walking through the door, Ashley, kind of thing. So,
was your fire insurance all paid up before they walked in?
It wasn't my store. I didn't care.
Okay. Well, there's one more thing for the evening, that we're going to talk about.
Before you go into that,
yeah.
So when we share to the Mac to the Future page, people can't see it. They can't see your link if you're not friends with you. I think
well, it should be right there on Facebook Live.
I think maybe when you created it today, you might have created it as a friends only possible live guest.
No, it was public. Well, we'll check on that after we get
there. Yeah. All right. Okay.
All right. Last thing for this has been the show from hell. I mean, it's
they're all fun.
Yeah, and it's not the computer this time. It's just been a strange series of unrelated events that have made things weird.
I'm still running on my generator. Maybe that's something to do with that.
Oh, are you? Is that what I hear in the background? Because I can kind of
then it's humming on my generator. It's been on for
your power's out.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
We got 8 inches of blizzard, and the power is out still.
Okay. Well, the last story for the evening is, what is your Apple ID worth? Now, this isn't asking what it's worth to you. It's asking, what is your Apple ID compromised? If it was compromised, what is it worth to somebody else? And according to the story that I found on Computer World, about $15 per account. But however, that makes it more valuable than an Amazon account, an eBay account, Skype, or Uber account. The thing that I kind of took exception to with this story was they kept calling it hacked. And these aren't hacked accounts. These are accounts that either have easy to guess passwords, or the person that owns the account has been tricked into revealing their credentials for this account. It's not like that we know of that somebody can just go in and sneak into your Mac and grab your Apple ID credentials and get into your Apple account. It's right now, as far as we know, that's not possible.
Right. So here's a couple minute thing on this. So Apple ID is tied to an email address. If they know your email, if they could get into your email, they could reset your Apple ID and lock you out if you do not have two-factor authentication turned on. This is why two-factor authentication is being pushed out, because at this point, every time you with two-factor authentication, as soon as somebody tries to log into your account, you could allow or deny that person from doing that at that point, no matter what. But if you don't have that turned on and they have your email access, then they'll get your Apple ID. They're not hacked. That's how they're getting it. Once they're doing that, then they could turn on. What they do is you'll see it on watches and phones. They try it on computers, but there's ways around that. But they'll lock you out of your phone, and they'll put a message on about it and say, if you want to unlock your phone, pay, 0.001 bitcoins to here, and that's real. That's happening, and I've seen it. So that could actually happen. That's why two-factor authentication is needed at this point. You have to do it. If you're not doing it, do it now. But as far as what they're doing with the Apple ID, I don't know, other than hacking or trying to
buy a bunch of stuff. Get Apple gift cards or iTunes cards.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, so if you go to like Craigslist and look under like computer gigs and things like that, everybody's asking, we'll buy your Google account, we'll buy your Facebook account. There's, I think a lot of them are buying accounts for social media likes and possibly, it could be App Store reviews for all we know. They're doing something with it. Who knows?
I hadn't even heard about this. They're buying social media accounts.
Oh yeah, go to Craigslist computer gigs. We want your Google account. We want your Facebook account. We want your Apple account. Things like that. They buy that. And then, what was the other scam I heard today? So gift cards. That's the other thing. But Apple iTunes cards. So the scam is if you ever get somebody calling or emailing saying that you're behind in your power bill IRS, and you have to IRS and you have to pay $100 in gift cards, and iTunes gift cards. Everybody was wondering like, what do you do? So what are they actually doing with it? And I heard this the other day, but on one of the podcasts. But essentially, what they're doing is either trading the gift cards in for less value, or they're buying apps with it because they know the developer and that person's getting 30% of whatever they're buying.
Right.
So yeah. So I mean,
it's still a diminishing scale of whatever the original amount was.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, it's low, but that's, I mean, I guess people do it. I guess there's enough people to do it. But yeah, no, protect your account.
Yeah.
Two-factor authentication. Just do it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a pain in the butt, but you gotta do it.
It is.
Do it.
Just
do it.
Your camera just switched. No, it didn't. You're back. As I was just saying earlier tonight, this Saturday we're going to have Mike Potter and Barry Falk from Macstock and Midwest Mac Barbecue. We'll be doing a live stream with them Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But speaking of Macstock 2018, this is the fourth year for it. It's going to be on the 21st and 22nd of July. As usual, it is in Woodstock, Illinois, at the McHenry County College campus in Crystal Lake. There's all kinds of places to stay. It's so easy to get to. Macstock is the place that you want to be if you want to get that feeling of what it was like to be like an insider.
Young?
I was certainly younger then. At the Macworld Expo before that all went away. Great speakers, great food, great people to talk to. Every single year that I have gone to Macstock, it's gotten better and better and better. And I'm anticipating that this year is not going to be any different. You want to know more? You want to learn more about it? Go to macstockconferenceandexpo.com. or just look up MacStock 2018 in the Googles, and it'll turn up there. Like I said, this Saturday we're going to have Mike and Barry on to talk about MacStock for this year. It's going to be a great time. Going to be doing that with Gaz, so don't miss that. If you want to get a hold of Warren, I guess the best way to do it, Warren?
Yeah, Facebook is a good way to do it. The Mac to the Future page is the way to go. I am starting to throw subtle hints to the wife about MacStock, so we'll see how it goes. But I would love to go. But yeah, come to the group, and we'll see you there.
Okay. If you want to,
and you, yes.
Oh, if you want to get a hold of me,
Yes.
Guy at mttfgo.com, Guy at mymac.com. I'm also Mac Parrot over there on the Twitters. We have a telephone number that you can call and leave a message, 703-436-9501. If you are outside of the United States, you may have to dial a 1 or a +1 or something along those lines to make it all work. But that number is 703-436-9501. Call that number, damn it. It's a lonely number. It needs company. Call it. I guess that is going to do it for this evening. Warren, thanks for coming on tonight and putting up with all the crazy crap that happened right there at the beginning.
No problem. Just a little note. I will be not joining you the next 2 weeks. I will be on a trip.
Oh, nice. Business or pleasure?
Pleasure.
Okay,
I don't work. Yeah. So there you go.
Okay. Well, we'll work out something.
Yeah.
At the very least, everyone can just look at my face for a half hour, 45 minutes. I'm sure they'd all love that.
Yeah, I like doing it.
I don't even like to do that.
I have to. I have no choice. I have to do it for an hour a day.
Anyway, I think that is going to do it for the evening. I'm looking at how things are going to work here, and I get the feeling that something really bad is about to happen when I hit the closing credits. We will find out. Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight, and we will see you next week.
See ya.
Nope, and it didn't work. Don't
see ya.
Hold on. I will fix this. I have the technology. Where is it? Right there.